Madonna had a habit of saying two completely contradictory things about the same man, and meaning both of them. She called Sean Penn the greatest love of her life. She also said marrying him was one of the biggest mistakes she ever made. For over 30 years, those two statements sat side by side, without much explanation. And most people assumed they already understood the story. Two enormous personalities, too much fire in one room, inevitable collapse. The media tied a neat bow around it and moved on. But in 2026, Madonna finally sat down and talked about that marriage in a way she never had before. And what she revealed reframed everything people thought they knew about one of Hollywood's most famous relationships. This is the real story, told as completely as it can be. Madonna Louise Veronica Ciccone was born on August 16, 1958, in Bay City, Michigan. The third of 6 children in a large, devoutly Catholic family of Italian and French-Canadian descent. Her early childhood was defined by one event above all others. When she was just 5 years old, her mother died of breast cancer. That loss carved something permanent into her. People who knew Madonna well in later years often pointed back to that moment as the engine behind almost everything she did. The relentless drive, the refusal to be overlooked, the deep and complicated fear of being left behind. When her father eventually remarried, Madonna grew increasingly restless. The quiet suburban rhythms of Michigan felt suffocating to her, and she poured everything she had into the one outlet that made sense: dance. She was a remarkable student academically, but it was movement that lit her up. She earned a dance scholarship to the University of Michigan, which looked, from the outside, like the beginning of a sensible path. But in 1978, Madonna made the decision that would define the rest of her life. She dropped out, packed what she could, and moved to New York City with approximately $35 in her pocket and no plan beyond the conviction that something bigger was waiting for her there. The early years in New York were genuinely brutal. She waitressed, posed as an art model, performed with small dance companies, and did whatever was necessary to stay afloat in a city that was indifferent to her ambition. But somewhere in the middle of that grinding period, she realized that dancing wasn't enough. She wanted to be the one at the center of the stage, not in the background, not in the ensemble, but at the front, with her name on the marquee. She started writing songs, playing instruments, and performing with local bands before eventually committing fully to a solo career. Her debut single, Everybody, arrived in 1982, followed by her self-titled first album the following year, which introduced songs like Holiday, Lucky Star, and Borderline to the world. But it was 1984 that changed everything. The album Like a Virgin turned Madonna from a promising pop act into a cultural force, and her performance of the title track at the MTV Video Music Awards, dressed in a wedding gown, performing in a way that left audiences either scandalized or electrified, announced to the entire world that this was someone who would not be contained. From that night forward, she dominated the charts for decades, with a string of hits that became the soundtrack of multiple generations. Material Girl, Papa Don't Preach, Like a Prayer, Vogue, Frozen, Music, and Hung Up, among many others. What separated Madonna from her peers wasn't just the music, it was the constant, deliberate reinvention. Every few years she would completely shed one version of herself and emerge as something unexpected. She challenged conventions around gender, sexuality, religion, and power, at a time when those challenges carried real professional risk. She opened doors that generations of artists walked through after her, and her influence on figures like Britney Spears, Lady Gaga, Beyoncé, Rihanna, and Taylor Swift has been widely acknowledged. Over 4 decades, she sold hundreds of millions of records, headlined record-breaking world tours, and built a legacy that most artists spend entire careers trying to approach. And yet, when she looked back at her own life, one of the things she returned to most painfully was a marriage. To understand what happened between Madonna and Sean Penn, you have to go back to February 1985. Madonna was 26. Penn was 24. She was shooting the music video for Material Girl, performing as Marilyn Monroe, when Penn arrived on set at the invitation of a director friend. Producer Sharon Orrick later described the chemistry between them as something like a bomb going off. By most accounts, They fell for each other almost immediately, despite a chorus of voices warning them that the relationship was headed for disaster. Looking back, it's not hard to see what drew them together. They were remarkably similar in temperament, both fiercely independent, both deeply stubborn, both driven by an absolute unwillingness to let anyone else define who they were. Madonna was dismantling every expectation of what a female pop